We got tons of news. Tons of news. Wait a second. Okay, not only is there a talking blooper, apparently I have my camera sideways. So, I mean, not the rotation thing here. Reset, transform. There we go, guys. Tons of news to talk about today. But I want to start with this. In my last video, I referenced the growing number of reports of people having stability issues with Intel Raptor Lake CPUs, 13th and 14th gen Intel CPUs, especially high-end ones. But I said that a lot of the error messages people were getting were saying out of video memory. And that sounded weird to me because, I mean, it certainly sounds like a GPU issue. So I mentioned in that video that I wanted to do a little more research on this. So that's what we're going with here. So actually, Nvidia themselves, in a driver changelog, have noted that this issue is an Intel issue. So in other words, let's say you are a user experiencing an out-of-video memory crash report from a game. Well, to me, that would sound like a video card, right? So you might be thinking you are having issues with your graphics card. So I imagine Nvidia was getting reports of these, but they are saying in this note, if your system is using an Intel 13th or 14th gen unlocked desktop CPU and is experiencing stability issues / out of video memory error messages or crashes to desktop while the game is compiling shaders, please consult the following sites for troubleshooting assistance. And notice they're sending you to an Intel page. So in other words, this seems to be evidence that Nvidia themselves, not Intel, but Nvidia, are pointing this issue to being an Intel issue. And again, so even though it's throwing a video memory error, it seems to be an issue with the CPUs. So that is very interesting. And again, doing other research, it does look like people have reported unstable settings for their Intel CPUs can throw this error message. Also, in addition to this, like showing that this is a pretty widespread problem, we're also seeing Falcon Northwest, who makes pre-built systems, tweeting out that for anyone experiencing crashes on Intel 13th and 14th gen CPUs, they are giving some motherboard settings you could use. Now, this is for the Asus Z790 motherboards with i9K CPUs. They're giving a bunch of settings that you could try changing in order to improve stability. And this relates to what the issue seems to be. Now, not only do I not have an i9 CPU that's giving issues, I don't have any i9 CPUs. I mostly review GPUs on this channel, so I only have a couple of actual test systems from a CPU perspective, and that's more in relation to testing out GPUs, right? And I use a 7800X 3D based system for my high-end CPU from which to, benchmark my GPUs. So the point is, this is not an issue that I can do a lot of personal research into other than looking about what other people are getting online and reporting it to you guys. But anyway, this does seem to be further indication that this problem is fairly widespread. So to try to avoid returns on it, it's looking like Falcon Northwest is reporting this. Now, a lot of these issues people seem to be saying are that motherboards are running these CPUs too hard out of the box. And so adjusting settings down could improve stability. But in general, I've got to say, like the i9 CPUs, like the 13900K, 14900K, the amount of power that those things are fed is kind of crazy. Like that's one reason why I went with the 7800X 3D for my test system rather than one of these i9s. Is it's just like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a good idea to be running that much power through your CPU, and this seems to be indicating that there are some sorts of stability issues going on there. Anyway, that's what I've got on that note, but well, Nvidia is, I wouldn't say throwing Intel under the bus on this one, but indicating that it is an Intel issue. That doesn't mean that Nvidia themselves aren't having more issues as well. So RTX 4090 GPUs, we've had reports of burnt power connectors, melting power connectors since launch, right? Shortly after launch, we started seeing this, and we had the issue being reported as probably user error connecting it not fully, and so if it's not fully connected, it builds up resistance, that builds up heat, and melts the power connector. However, even if it's technically user error, it's a poorly designed connector. Because if the connector is easy to connect, not fully connect, then that is a bad design that leads to that issue. And it's also been reported that it's possible that a fully connected one could be, jostled and slowly loosen or something like that over time. The point is, this has been an ongoing issue. And apparently, I'm seeing this in a WCCF Tech article, but their source seems to be this YouTube video from Northridge Fix, who fixes hardware, is reporting that he's getting up to 200 melted power connectors a month to repair. So that is quite a few. So in the meantime, since this issue was fully connected, the connectors themselves have been revised so that the sense pins, I think, are shorter, so that if you're not getting a full connection, it's more likely to shut off the power going to the thing and not get that overheating issue. Now, it's unclear in this video whether some of these issues are on those redesigned pins or these are just having issues from the original batch that didn't have that redesign. But he does show in the video the box of 200 melted connectors. So this seems kind of legit. Anyway, so I did just want to report that apparently these are still issues. I still see people commenting about this on my channel. And yeah, people are still having issues with this. That being said, what percentage of the total? Because that's one thing about statistics. It's like, okay, here's 200 with an issue, but out of how many? I still think this is not like a super common problem, but that doesn't mean it isn't a problem. And, I haven't had issues on mine, but that doesn't mean nobody's having issues. It does look like people are having issues. So that's kind of back in the news. Now, on a somewhat related story, let's say you were somebody in China who bought an RTX 4090 back when you were allowed to buy those in China, and maybe you had a problem and needed to return it. Maybe the pins are melting, something like that. Or maybe you just needed repairs. But if those repairs get shipped out of China, what are you gonna do? Because you can't ship it back, or you can't ship a replacement to China. So there's been an issue with these RTX 4090 RMAs in China, where apparently the solution, if you would have to ship it out and then ship it back to China, which is now sanctioned from certain countries that are applying, obeying the U.S. sanctions, I guess the issue is just solved by refunding the whole GPU. But then in China, what do you do now? Well, I guess you buy an RTX 4090D, which are, not that much weaker than a 4090. But anyway, it just puts that whole thing in kind of a complicated sort of a situation. But I'm just going to throw this in here. I hardly ever talk about Apple products, but speaking of issues with hardware, a lot of people are finding out that when you buy an 8 gigabyte RAM, not even talking VRAM, an 8 gigabyte RAM system, because in Apple products, it's unified memory. So that's 8 gigabytes period total on their laptops. If you try to run multiple programs at the same time, good luck. Now, Apple executives were apparently asked about this and said it's suitable for many everyday tasks. And sure enough, if you're just browsing on a web browser and nothing else, maybe you will get by with that. But with the price of Apple products, it's just horrifying to me that they're shipping systems with 8 gigabytes of unified memory. Anyway, in other hardware news, but this one's definitely got to be up there on the rumor side of things, we are getting Computer Base citing industry circles, talking about when are we getting Battlemage GPUs? When are we getting those next-gen Intel GPUs? A lot of us want them, but my concern right now is that they're going to come too late. Because that kind of already happened to Intel's Arc GPUs. If they had come when they had been originally expected, they would have hit during the whole pandemic situation, where if they could have had decent price tags attached, a lot of people might have been willing to put up with the software issues and all of that. Well, now, when are we going to get Battlemage? Because if they were hitting right now, it's going to be a while before we get the next generation from AMD and Nvidia. But we are expecting new AMD and Nvidia products at the end of this year. Now, it might only be the high-end initial products, but then as we get into 2025, we'll start getting the next generation. Well, apparently the quote on this from industry circles, whatever that means, and again, rumors, leaks, take it with a grain of salt, is that they want to launch before Black Friday. Now, that could be fine if they launch way before Black Friday. But if they are just launching shortly before Black Friday to hit Black Friday sales, I'm a little bit concerned because that's probably pretty close to when, like I said, we're getting a new generation from Nvidia. Now, granted, Nvidia usually leads with their top-end products, so probably like a 5090 and a 5080, and I don't think that Battlemage will be competing directly with those products, but I'm just saying I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be a little bit late. So they're saying that at the fair, it's now whispered that the manufacturer is aiming for the fall, and definitely wants to capitalize on the sales season, which peaks with Black Friday. This aligns with Intel's already officially announced schedule. After all, Black Friday falls about 5 weeks before the end of the year, this year on November 29th. So product launch must happen no later than November. Intel Arc 1.0 was released early October 2022. So also coming out around then would also put it on kind of a 2-year cadence, which seems fairly normal for GPU launches, being on about every 2 years kind of schedule for the last several generations. So anyway, I don't know. I hope we get something exciting from Battlemage. Intel's software has been getting a lot better. It's still not perfect, but it's been getting a lot better. I'm hoping, and with new product generations, you get, there's lower hanging fruit on improving the architecture to get major performance gains. Whereas if you have a more mature architecture design, it's harder to get those large leaps. So I'm still cautiously optimistic about Battlemage, but we'll have to see what we get. Now, in other news, 7000 series AMD and 40 series RTX GPUs from Nvidia are apparently all below MSRP in Germany now. This is an interesting report. I saw it at videocards.com. By the way, all my sources will be in the video description. But I think they're getting their information from 3D Center. But either way, we've got this handy table where you can look at each GPU from the 7000 and 40 series and look at, in the US, if you use like Newegg pricing, the difference between MSRP and the product pricing, where you can see some products are available at their MSRP, some are a little below, some a little bit above, really just the 4090 is above MSRP. Everything else is below, like the 7900 XT had a terrible MSRP, so it's way below. But if you look at it in apparently the German market, you're seeing more significant drops below MSRP, which is interesting. So I thought I'd report on it. Again, I know the majority of my viewers are US-based, but I do have a worldwide, if I look at the YouTube stats where viewers are from, a good chunk from Germany. So there you go. Anyway, I'm also seeing in product news headlines, GPU pricing headlines, that the 7700 XT has dropped below $400. Now, by below, it's like $1 below, sometimes $5 below. But 7700 XT pricing has dropped. Like if you see these really low ones, those are refurbished. So really, it's like $5 below. Now, the original MSRP was $450. So this is a significant discount below MSRP. But as I reported in my recent GPU buying guide video, I'm not that excited about this because the 6800 from AMD's previous generation is available as low as $375. So if you can get it for $375, they perform about the same, but the 6800 has 4 extra gigabytes of VRAM because it has 16 instead of 12, and it costs less still. So I'm not really going to be that excited about the 7700 XT hitting $400 until it either goes below the price of a 6800 or the 6800s are no longer available. Now, the problem with that is that it's looking like we're seeing a bunch of reports that the 6000 series from AMD inventory is drying up. So I'm a little concerned right now because most of my lower price segment, like mid and low end GPU price recommendations, are currently RX 6000 GPUs, if you watch my monthly GPU buying guide. So once those are gone, I'm a little bit concerned about what kind of good deals we'll get. Now, maybe that would mean that AMD would be more willing to lower their 7000 series pricing, but if not, like I said, I'm a little bit concerned. Now, in other GPU pricing news, I will mention a deal that I don't usually talk about these deals, but this one does seem possibly interesting. I usually don't mention when you have to buy with Zip. Newegg does these deals a lot where if you buy using Zip, then you can get some percentage off. But I will mention that not only is the 7900 XTX available at $900, which, okay, that's lower than they usually are, but maybe not super exciting. This would bring it down to down a whole nother $100 because it would hit the $100 max on the 12% off. So this would be available at $800 for a 7900 XTX. And I do think the XTX is more interesting at $800 than it is at $900 because that puts it right up against the 4070 Ti Super. And so in rasterized performance, it does have a pretty healthy lead over the 4070 Ti Super, even if in heavy ray tracing workloads, the Ti Super still has an argument for it. But this would be pretty interesting. But again, you have to pay with Zip, which could be annoying. So anyway, thought I'd at least mention that though, when I was researching GPU pricing. Now with AMD GPUs, again, not only do you have the ray tracing thing, but also the upscaling differences. But AMD has recently teased their FSR 3.1 being a major improvement, at least in their claims and their first-party screenshots, improvement to their upscaler. Now, I'm excited to get these in games, so I was curious if we'd get it in Horizon Forbidden West, but I guess the reason they're delaying FSR 3 support is that they're waiting for FSR 3.1, but they're saying that they're kind of just waiting on AMD, because AMD, I guess, needs to kind of finish FSR 3.1 and make that available to developers so they can start implementing it. So I'm really waiting on this because, for example, Digital Foundry recently did an updated look at the latest versions of FSR versus XeSS and DLSS, because XeSS was just updated to version 1.3. And DLSS was updated to version 3.7. And you can drop those newest versions of their DLLs into Horizon Forbidden West, and then you can compare it against the newest version of FSR upscaling, which is still FSR 2.2. Remember, FSR 3 didn't improve the upscaler. It used the same upscaler as the older versions of FSR. 3 just added in the frame generation feature. So, this is a still screenshot of a moving frame, and just look how much more pixelated in motion this FSR image is compared to these. Now, I highly recommend watching this video. It's a really good analysis if you're interested in the differences between these upscalers. Oh, and also if you're interested in why is this the quality version of XeSS against the balanced mode versions here, that's because with the update to XeSS 1.3, Intel changed their naming scheme in relation to what sort of internal resolution it's using. So this is using the same internal resolution, but unfortunately is renamed in a confusing way, which is very frustrating. But I talked about that more in my last video. Anyway, really want to see FSR 3.1 improve on how pixelated the motion can get in games like this. Now, speaking of FSR and DLSS, it's looking like Final Fantasy XIV will get DLSS and FSR additions along with other graphical improvements when it gets its Dawntrail expansion. However, there is already a benchmark for this update available. So if you want to see how your system would run that, as well as maybe test out DLSS and FSR in the game, as well as the new graphics improvements, which could make the game more difficult to run, I thought I'd report that that benchmark is now available. Now, in other news, I think this is pretty cool. I'm seeing this from WCCF Tech, but when I was digging into it, it doesn't seem to have there's a direct quote here, but it doesn't seem like an official announcement. Anyway, but it does seem like a legitimate, this does seem trustworthy from what I can tell. Anyway, the headline is Nvidia is working with partners to create new small form factor gaming PC ecosystem powered by SFF enthusiast GeForce GPUs. So this is kind of interesting. So again, one of the cool things with PC is you can build all sorts of things. You can build small form factor. You can care a lot about what it looks like. You can spend $500 on your case. You could literally just not even have a case and just stick your components on a cardboard box or mount them to your wall. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do, but the problem with small form factor builds is you have to be really careful about which parts work, and like a lot of GPUs nowadays are getting bigger and bigger and bigger because you feel like you're getting a better deal if you get a bigger cooler, and hey, having more, mass to dissipate the heat can be a good thing. But in general, a lot of GPUs are getting really big, so this sounds pretty cool. Here's the quote. It says, enthusiasts around the world are choosing small form factor chassis for their dream rigs. However, when building around modern enthusiast GPUs, finding the best components for a small form factor build can be challenging. So Nvidia has developed form factor guidelines to help gamers pick the best RTX GPU and components for their small form factor build. These guidelines provide dimensions and clearances between enthusiast graphics cards and small form factor chassis, creating a standard for AIC, that's like the GPU board manufacturers, and chassis manufacturers to help make building small form factor gaming PCs a great experience. So in other words, it looks like the goal here is to set a design standard around the sizes for these the GPU components as well as the cases, so that you can be more confident that you're buying a GPU that can fit in this case, right? Because that's one of the challenging things with the small form factor builds. Anyway, so I thought that was kind of cool. Now, if you're interested in small form factor builds, I thought I'd mention that BioStar has launched an Arc A380 mini ITX GPU with DisplayPort 2.0 and no extra power connector. So that could be of interest if you want to go the Intel route on a small form factor build. And in other GPU news, we're also seeing a low-profile, all-white RTX 4060 with 3 fans coming from Galax, which I think is pretty cool. And then also, just in other white GPU news, although no longer small form factor, we are seeing Aorus or Aorus. I never am confident on that. But Gigabyte's high-end line, launching RTX 4080 Super Extreme Ice GPU, as well as a Z790 Extreme Ice motherboard that could match. So if you're interested in high-end white builds, that could be of interest to you. And we're also seeing a white GPU design coming from Zotac for their RTX 4070 Ti Super Trinity with a white OC model, JX Online 3 edition. But I'm pretty sure this is just available in the Asian market, if I am correct on that one. And then in other GPU news, if you're interested in something a little more unique, how about a Voodoo, but updated with HDMI port, huh? Wait, what is this? So again, I'm seeing this as a videocards.com article, but what apparently this is taking an actual Voodoo graphics card, from, a quarter century ago, 24 years ago, but updating it to be compatible with a modern monitor that might only have like an HDMI input. And this seems like a really cool project being done by Oscar Barea. And he's been tweeting about it actually getting up and running and connecting. So that's pretty cool if you ask me. Not that a lot of people would be interested in, buying something like this. This is more just a cool project that I thought I would report on. And then speaking of cool things that I wanted to report on, this is more fixing something that I found annoying in the past. So Xbox Cloud Gaming. On PC, it can be a little bit frustrating because it's really more of streaming console games, but you can stream it to your PC. So it's frustrating to do that on a PC and then not be able to use a mouse and keyboard. But it's looking like we're getting more and more games supporting mouse and keyboard for Xbox Cloud streaming, which I think is a very welcome addition. I wish it was just going to be standard for everything. So it's looking like we have a complete list now. This is coming from trueachievements.com. But anyway, we now have a list of games with mouse and keyboard support available for cloud streaming. So that is really good news for that service from the PC user perspective. So very cool to see that. And then the last news item I want to leave you on, I don't know if this qualifies for like a hardware news video, But one of my favorite pieces of PC hardware is my Steam Deck. I have been playing my Steam Deck way more than my actual gaming PC lately because I've been playing Slay the Spire just nonstop. And Slay the Spire 2 has been announced, and I am so excited. So I thought I'd mention that before I go. Early access should be available in 2025, and I am unreasonably excited for this because Slay the Spire is awesome, and this looks like more Slay the Spire. And that's exactly what I need. So anyway, thought I'd leave you with that. Hopefully you guys found this video useful and or interesting. Huge thank you to channel viewers, subscribers, commenters, and especially people who click the join button to directly fund the channel financially. Notice no sponsor in today's video, so we could consider this one sponsored by channel members for clicking that join button to directly support. You do get like badges on your comments, so you get a badge next to your name when you comment on the channel. You also get early access to some videos, occasionally exclusives. I'm honestly going to try to get better about providing more behind-the-scenes content that wouldn't make sense on the main channel, but trying to get more of that in there for channel members and all of that. So huge thank you to you guys, and totally understand those of you who can't or don't want to do that. That is totally fine, no pressure. And I hope everybody has an excellent day.